Anyway, so we're almost at the end of 2 days that we all said were actually very exciting for us. Ralf was very, very happy. It was a while, a moment ago, but he kept saying how happy he is. I think we're all happy, and I hope everyone else in the room is happy. We conceived this as a conference in part, I think, because Safra still had money to organize a conference, but in part really also to establish or continue a kind of collaboration between Max-Planck and thank you, I guess. To really extend the collaboration that I think, and I'm probably speaking for Marietta here as well, that is very valuable for us, and that the Max-Planck-Institut is here for private law in Hamburg and for legal history and legal theory in Frankfurt alike. This is a very valuable connection for us, and I'm very grateful that we could do this and that we could do it in Tel Aviv. And offered we could also do it in Hamburg. And I said, no, let's do it in Tel Aviv. And Hamburg is at -5 degrees at the moment. So
this is reciprocity among virtuous friends.
Yeah. I think this is a win-win situation, I think. So the topic, I'll say a little more about the topic in a moment, came, I think, also from conversations between the idea that from an economic perspective, which tends to have one type of method, and from a comparative law perspective, at least, which tends to have a different method, or at least part of comparative law has a different method. The idea was to see how do those two methods or logics or rationalities, if you want, how do those relate to each other through history, I would say, on the example of markets and through history. And I think that worked out in interesting and for me not completely predicted ways, and I'll say a little about that in a moment, but I'll say the other thing that they said is let's just invite fabulous people and then something good will come out of that. And so partly I'm not praising you all for being fabulous people, and I'm praising us for having found fabulous people. But I think that's also really worked out. I think that's really been a conversation that we've had that was tremendously enjoyable, in part because you all brought so much in. So what else do you have to bring in? This is now
the rectory.
This is after trades come the duties. So the publication, as you know, we have a publication for all the papers. Berg says he's not committed to the paper, but he is committed to the paper. All of you did commit to the paper earlier, and I hope.
Critical committee.
Who wrote about consent?
Consent is really overrated. So the publication, this comes out with Law and Contemporary Problems at Duke University. Law and Contemporary Problems was the Duke Law School alternative at the time to the other law reviews, and its deliberate intention was to have shorter papers, to have interdisciplinary papers, to have papers about actual problems, and to put the papers in a conversation. And so we think for all those 4 reasons, it's really a very good fit for us. And we're very happy that we're placing there, but it also means that the publication process is a little different than it sometimes could be for books or for law reviews. So one, we have a fairly tight deadline. And I realized that in our email, we almost were unwisely transparent about what our internal deadline is. So I think we were very, very generous, and with the generous dates, we'll just have to stick to those, because otherwise we run into problems. But what we wrote you is to say we want a revised draft after the conference, hoping that you are able to take in a lot from the conference by the end of February 28th. We'll have a turnaround, we promised, by 8 weeks, but hopefully much sooner. And then we need the final version, final draft by July 16th, because almost immediately afterwards it has to go to the journal. And the journal has very fixed times at which the students can work on this. And so those dates are fairly important for us. So you have those in the email. We'll probably send another email, but the one date to remember is end of February, and the other date is July 16th. Now, on the content of the papers, One thing is something that the faculty supervisor wrote explicitly, and I'll read that out to you. On the substance of the articles, the board has asked me to emphasize our understanding that each essay will address, in its particular context, the tension between historical comparative approaches to the study of markets and conceptual approaches. Thus, the issue will not simply be a collection of articles, some of which use one approach and some of which use the other. Rather, each article will address how to combine or reconcile the two approaches. Some of you did that very explicitly. Some of you did that implicitly. Some of you did that very implicitly. And no one has to rewrite their papers, obviously, but everyone should address somewhere in the paper how the specific projects that you have relate to this question, the question that we phrased earlier. I mean, it's formulated here as historical comparative versus conceptual. That's one possible formulation of the tension that I think we formulated. But the tension that we described in the original invitation should be in there somewhere. Needs to be explicit. That's the one thing that they demand from us. The second thing that they don't demand explicitly, but implicitly, I would say, is the chance to engage with each other's papers and presentations. So Rachel did that fantastically in her presentation, and maybe that goes into the paper as well. That's just something, if everyone can do some of that, that would, I think, be very valuable. So just carry some of what we had in the conversation here on into your publications. The first drafts are available on the Safra website still, of course. We will make the revised drafts available there as well, I guess, end of February, but by then you should already have engaged with everybody else's papers and only have to update the page number. So those are the two requirements.
You will have access to, right, to the hour, your hour, if you want to see it again.
Oh, the video?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Each author will be able to get from Noah their hour in order to reflect.
That's very valuable, because you can also hold the videos against you, should you. Different. We'll also hope that some of the, thank you everyone who also gave comments. We decided not to put the comments in the issue because they wouldn't be on equal level, but some of them, all of them were great, and some of them were written out, and it would be great if those who gave comments would actually share those with the respective authors at least, and if the respective authors made use of them and thanked them profusely as one does. So that much on the publication. And any more questions on that? Yeah,
Just to encourage all, I have notes and I'll send it to people, and if you had notes on my stuff, send it to me, because we've never had a chance, so hopefully we can email.
That's right also. Yeah, that's also great. So anyone who has valuable comments for anyone else should share those with anyone else. But okay, and with that, to my 5-7, hopefully, minutes on outside of reflection, right? Because I don't study markets myself. I'm not a historian. I'm not an economist. I'm hardly a comparative lawyer. I'm mostly a conflicts lawyer, which doesn't help anyway. So these are mainly outsiders' perspectives, but maybe they're interesting enough or not. So the topic was methodological tensions in dealing with markets. So one issue is methodological tensions, and one is markets. And my sense was we all assumed something that markets are, and often without explicitly spelling out what we actually mean by markets. Right? So we had discussions about capitalism, we had discussions about contracts and exchanges, we had discussions about private ordering, we had discussions on state governance versus market governance. So a lot of kind of an abstraction, you could say, of what we mean by markets. And the talk of markets sometimes as though they are some entity out there, maybe even some essence, but certainly something else. We had some discussions on whether markets in ancient Greece for Aristotle were the same as markets today. But often we refer to market, I would say, less as a concrete place, as markets historically were, right? Marketplaces were actual places, but as ideas, you could say, or as a certain type of logic. So that's one thing that I took from that. We talk about markets, but mostly not as the real markets, but as a logic. And that means on the one hand, it's more than what actual marketplaces were, because it becomes the metaphor that can turn into lots of other things, a market for rights, a market for political votes, etc. And on the other hand, it gets narrower, of course, because it lacks all the specifics that marketplaces have. I mean, the marketplace of ideas was a historical actual place, right? That's where you shared ideas. You would meet your spouse there, you would dress up, you would get into the new scene in the city. So markets were about much more than just the specific economic exchange. And so on one hand, I realized when we talk about markets in this room, at least we talk about a logic and not about actual markets. So what then of the tension? I had expected there would be a great tension between decontextualized and contextualized approaches. I would say there wasn't so much. Almost no one who really went into abstract modeling. Maybe Oren did in the morning. I wasn't there. But otherwise, it was somewhere between, you could say, between Marietta and Katarina, to pick on one conversation from yesterday. So not kind of dramatically far away from the other. Everyone was contextualizing to some extent, and no one was contextualizing completely. No one was doing the actual Sharon kind of aesthetic description. So even one abstracts at some point on a growth utility function. So there's something abstract. So in that sense, that tension didn't work out so much. But I think, secondly, something that Ralf then mentioned is the logic of the market turned, I think, into a prioritization of economic thinking over other types of thinking. So we assumed somehow, because the market is an economic institution, which, as I said, market was not only that, but that's because we understand it like that. The logic that we understand to be the market invites us to start, if you want, from economics. So I think we had something of what Dr. Ralf said, that the legal analysis adopts ideas from modern economics. Philosophers, so Lisa responds to the economists, to economic discussions. Ron, as I said, adopts kind of economic rationality, economic thinking functions into his historical analysis. And Katarina mentioned the point that when you discuss the Fed, somewhere only people with economic background speak about it because the Fed can only be viewed as an economic institution. And that is, in a sense, you could say that the consequence of the first step, so first we understand markets as a logic, and then that logic invites us to talk about economics, or start with an economic rationale and deal with that. So we can say we're for or against markets, we can say we want better markets or worse markets, but the market in terms of this particular logic is then. And so the interesting thing for me was that we didn't really, what we didn't do, and it's not a critique, that's an interesting insight for me to go at kind of non-economic analyses of markets, of what markets are. So one would be, and it came a little bit in one of the footnotes, I think, of Rachel's paper, where she says she doesn't deal with the anthropological literature, where the anthropological literature says the beginning is not barter, but it's gift. Right? And so the idea in economics of particular kind of exchange between rational actors, which we tend to essentially, is not actually at the heart of society at large, although we tend to think of it very much like that. So the first is we didn't look at those types of alternatives. The second, we didn't go back to the materiality, if you want, of the exchange or of the markets themselves. So because it was, insofar as we talk of markets as logic, we didn't talk of markets as places, as in that sense concrete places at which a lot happens beyond the economic exchange. And as I said, I'm just stating that as a reflection of what I saw here and what maybe demonstrates something that happens when we talk about markets. That's really all that I want to say. I don't want to say what the alternative could have been beyond those things. I'm not sure it could have been that. I think maybe the moment you start with an abstract concept like markets, it drives you down that road. But the fact that it does drive you down that road was very interesting to me. That's all I can say.